Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Hector Castillo, Chief Product Officer at Byond, and I'd like to welcome you to today's panel discussion. We have three panelists, and the topic for today will be scaling your business. These three CEOs we invited to be able to share their stories as to how they have scaled their businesses, and we're looking forward to that. Before we proceed, I'd like to introduce you to our host, Laurie. Hi, Laurie. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you, Hector. Hello, everyone. I'm Laurie Wiggins, CEO of Byond, and Hector and I are co-hosting today's webinar. Welcome.
All right. And now what I would like to do is ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves. And I'm going to be calling on them so they can introduce themselves. And once we proceed, we can get going with the program. Manoj, can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Manoj Ramnani. I'm the founder and CEO of SalesIntel, a company where we provide data and intelligence to the sales and marketing teams so that they can go grow their top line and bottom line. Prior to that, I've been very fortunate to build three companies in the federal market as well as in the education and the consumer space with amazing teams. So happy to be here today.
Great. Thank you so much. Looking forward to it.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Arman Eshraghi, founder and CEO at Qrvey. I'm a serial founder, entrepreneur, CEO. Most recently, I started Qrvey in 2016, and I have been there for 5 years now. And previous to Qrvey, I started Logi XML in 2000. We changed the name to Logi Analytics afterward, recently known as Logi Analytics. As you can say, people telling me that you have a special talent in choosing names that it's difficult to be pronounced. Most of the companies I have started are around B2B and software product companies, and also around data analytics and automation. In particular, Qrvey provides embedded analytics for SaaS providers running on AWS.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Ashish Khot. I'm CEO of Technomile. Technomile is an enterprise software company where we focus primarily on aerospace defense, government contracting, customers, as well as architecture engineering industry, where we have a software that helps them go win the right opportunities, as well as being compliant with all of the opportunities and all of the programs that they are currently servicing.
So before we get started, I'd like to go over some general housekeeping items. First of all participants are in listen-only mode. And if you have any audio issues, you can always refresh your browser, or you may be able to, if it's extreme, you may need to step out and come back in using the same attendance link that you used to join today's discussion. We're also encouraging all of you to submit questions. There will be a Q&A from the audience. We're asking you to submit your questions using the chat window, and we will answer them during the Q&A portion of today's discussion. And we are recording today's session, so we will be sharing a link to all of you so that you can actually view the video playback after today's live session. And also we're asking you that if you are on Twitter or LinkedIn, you can follow us, and the handles on the top are our Twitter handles. You can follow our company profile, or you can follow Laurie or myself. You can also follow us on LinkedIn, and this is the short URL to our company page. Also, special thanks to Scott Taylor, who is actually the person that is leading the editing and the publishing of the video that you'll be viewing after today's live session. So shout out and kudos to Scott Taylor. A little bit about Byond. We make massive positive impact within any organization we work with. We help our clients in quickly growing and scaling technology and software companies, and we help you either scale, buy, or sell, and obtain funding as well. So these are all the things that we can help you with. To begin today's discussion, and we get this quite a bit, we actually have spoken in previous sessions about the difference between scaling and growing. And today we're going to be talking about scaling your business. So what's the difference between growing and scaling? Very quickly, growing a business focuses on looking at the top line, the revenue and growth in revenue, and figure out how to get that rate of growth to be higher. A business that scales will invest enough so that not only can you continue to grow your sales, but also be able to increase the profitability within your business, and that is the EBITDA. And people who scale are not just growing their sales revenue, we're also diversifying and acquiring new customers without necessarily having to have a lot of a rising cost structure. And so scaling, as you might imagine, is actually a little bit harder than growing a business. You can grow your sales and often may need to bring in more people, so your costs will rise as you capture more business. Those who scale their business will actually maintain the same number of resources and perhaps invest on enough assets so that they can actually do more and acquire 20, 30, 40 times more the customer base without significantly increasing their cost structure. So now that I've gone over that we're ready to actually jump in to now ask our panelists to share how they scale their business. And for the next question, Laurie will step up and be asking the question and then having our panelists answer.
Thanks, Hector. So the question is, share the story, please, of how you started your company.
Yeah, so Laurie, I started SalesIntel about 3-ish years ago. This was actually a pivot from my last company, Circleback, which I ran since 2012. We were solving the contact data decay problem for the consumers like you and I, right? Prosumers like you and I. You look at your address book on your mobile phone and you'll find over 30% of your contacts are out of date, right? And there's no easy way to keep up with the rate of change because people are changing jobs and getting promoted within the same company, and so on and so forth, right? So that was the problem we were trying to solve for the consumers. And we realized that it is so difficult to build a consumer company sitting right here in DC. The ecosystem doesn't exist, as well as monetization of consumer is really hard unless you get to like hundreds of millions of consumers, right? But we saw the problem of data decay exist in the B2B world for the businesses, right? CRM data is going out of date, the marketing data is going out of date. Sales and marketing teams are looking for timely intelligence and the data that they can act upon to grow the revenue. So we pivoted about 3 years ago and built SalesIntel to provide the data and intelligence to the sales and marketing teams, the revenue teams to grow their business. So that's how the idea of SalesIntel came in. Out of, we had a solution, but for the consumers where we didn't have the monetization, whereas we had to figure out the monetization path, and we found that the businesses can provide that monetization so we provide SaaS, SalesIntel in as a SaaS solution to the revenue organizations.
When I started Qrvey, it was back into end of late 2015 and starting 2016, and that was the time that I thought, AWS is going to create some revolutionary changes, something that in a big way is going to change the software development landscape. Some new technologies were introduced, like microservices, and later on it became serverless technology that essentially acted like a new operating system for the new age. And back then I thought many of the problems that in the past life we could not really address and many of those things that customers really, really needed, but we never could even get close to solve it. Now we have the opportunity to just reinvent the solution and just tackle all of them. So we created some buckets essentially that every single deal that we lost in the 10, 15 years, we put in those buckets. And that became the kind of, the idea behind Qrvey. So when we created the company, we wanted to really have a platform for SaaS providers who can use analytics, infuse analytics within their applications, and solve all of those problems that they couldn't solve before.
Thank you. Ashish?
So Technomile originally started as a services organization where I was coming off of my previous startup and got introduced to a lot of the industry customers around our region here in DC. And many of those customers were really trying to adopt newer cloud platforms. But obviously, they were spending a lot of time and a lot of dollars in making these cloud platforms very specific to their business use case. And what I noticed was a pattern where a lot of these organizations were having very similar challenges, and they were struggling with how to transform their organizations away from traditional old ERP systems or on-prem technologies. And we started developing solutions that resonated really well, which were really focused on cloud-first technology, mobile-first technology, and subsequently, we have now added a lot of AI machine learning capability on it as well. But the genesis of starting the product journey was identifying a repeatable use case that we noticed and really trying to put best practices around it, talking to our customers as well as advisors. And we were able to develop a product and subsequently additional capability onto that really meets an industry specific need.
Thank you, Ashish.
So thank you so much. The next question is, what was your strategy to scale your business? And for this, I'd like to actually give Arman the lead, and then we can move on to others. Arman, can you tell us how you came to devise your strategy on how to scale your business?
Absolutely. So, every business, of course, might be different, but in our case, it's a product software business. It's addressing a technology challenge, a very complex product to offer to SaaS providers. We have started with the product, and we had to really make sure the product is scalable. It's not a service-oriented product, meaning that it's the same product being offered to hundreds or thousands of customers, as I did with the other companies that I had. It's the same exact product, but it's configurable. So every SaaS provider can customize and configure it at any level they want. That requires the product to scale well to any number of customers. So that was the first phase. And when the product was scalable, it's time to really take it to the market. So the marketing side needed to be scalable to generate demand for the product. And then we had to work on the sales part, that we can sell also, and it does not become a bottleneck to sell the product and go through the trial and through the sales process itself. And of course, after you sell to so many customers, customer success will become the center of the attention and the kind of main factor for the success of the business in long run. So that part needs to be scalable and can scale to any number of customers. So that's really the way it worked for us to start from the product, go to the marketing side, go to the sales side, go to the essentially the customer success. And while we were doing all of these, every single process needed to be kind of evaluated. And is it the right process? The mentality, the DNA of the company, I would say the culture of the company need to foster also scalability, even though at the beginning, efficiency for any startup is key to survive. So probably that's, more about really efficiency than about, being kind of impactful or be effective. So that's really the center of the attention at the beginning. But later, you wanted to also make sure that the team members are able to scale the business when we pass that kind of efficiency phase at the very start.
Great. Thank you so much. Ashish, can you also respond to this question? We'd like to know your story about how you came about to scaling your business.
Sure. So as Arman mentioned, having a right scalable product and having product market fit, those are some of the early challenges that every business goes through. And once those are addressed, and as Arman kind of shared, the sales and marketing and culture story, there were 4 factors that we considered when we reached the next stage of scaling up, where first was really having a right team. Having the right people also in the team is obviously really the most important factor. So identifying them, retaining them. So there was a people strategy. There was obviously the business strategy that really involved how to go to market, the valuation, the value proposition of the product, what key drivers that the customers are marketplace is also seeing in your product. How do you build them? How do you nurture them and excel in it? So there was a business strategy. Then there was an execution of the business strategy that involved engineering functions, that involved the sales and marketing function to scale up, involve customer success to really get to that stage. So execution of various departments. And then last but not the least is really having a well-capitalized business. When you start to scale up, you want to make sure that you're well-capitalized, that when you have the resiliency in the business to continue to keep going on that path. So those were the 4 true pillars that we applied in terms of like how we developed our growth strategy.
Great. Thank you so much. Manoj, can you respond to this question?
Yeah. So when we started SalesIntel, the initial strategy to scale the company was like, after we proved the product market fit, and my way of proving the product market fit was, a couple of us in the company, early founders, we just got on a call and called everybody that we knew and see if we can get them to pay for the service, right? The sales and marketing organization. So once we got to 20, 30 paying customers, our initial strategy was to scale through digital marketing, where everything is self-serviced. You create the demand through marketing, bring the customer on the product, and use a product-led growth strategy to grow the revenue. It didn't work. It didn't work for a variety of different reasons. It didn't work, and what we learned was in the B2B space, when a customer spends $10, $15, $20, $30,000, they need consultative sales, right? They need product demos. They need that hand holding before they make a decision. So we moved to the traditional model where we use the marketing to create the awareness, but then had the SDR team to create, to set up the demos, and the classic account executive teams to do the demo, do the trial, and close the deal, and hand over to CS to then nurture that deal. So to just summarize, initial strategy didn't work to just do product-led growth and digital marketing. But then when we made the switch to the traditional sales model, it started to work, and that's when we put the foot on the gas and went from one SDR, one AE pair to 2, then 5, and now we are over 100-person go-to-market team.
Great. Thank you so much. And the next question, Laurie will take.
Thanks, Hector. For all the panelists, starting with Manoj, when did you decide to scale and why? In other words, when during your journey, what conditions were present that made you decide this is a good time to scale, and why? Manoj?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So as I mentioned, we went from pure digital marketing and product-led growth to a traditional model where digital marketing was creating the demand, creating the awareness. But then we had the BDR and the AE and the CSM model. When we went to that model, we started with a one pair, one SDR, one AE. And within 60, 90 days, we started to see, what the teams are becoming, this team is becoming productive. Then we added a second pair within like 4 months of that first pair. And we saw the second pair became productive in shorter period than the first. That was the time. About the same time, we saw consolidation in the market started to happen, right? There used to be Discover, Overgrain, King, ZoomInfo, Data9, four companies providing kind of similar solution with some differentiation. And we saw Carlyle come in and put huge amount of money to consolidate these. And all of a sudden, there was a need for a second player in the market, right? So we saw ourselves in that fortunate situation. On one end, our product was being appreciated, being used by our customers. At the same time, as market dynamics changed, that's when we went from 2 pairs to 6, and then 6 to 10, and 10 to 20. Those were the triggers for us to scale the business.
Great. Arman?
Yeah, so in our case, it was really, we needed to pay attention to each phase. And when that phase was done, test it before we start the next one. For example, on the marketing and sales, as you know, especially on the marketing side, it can be pretty expensive. So when you really start to scale it and start to really ramp it up, you have to make sure that the previous phase, in our case, again, the foundation is solid enough that you can build upon that. Otherwise, you will start, spending the money, and it will waste your resources, and then it may not result. And even worse, it will kill the momentum of the team, and it will kill their confidence. So we had to be very careful not to really just, say, okay, we are done, let's move to the next one, and rush it through, but making sure the product that we are building, it is at this stage that we can actually, go ahead and build on top of that and bring all of this demand, and then marketing does the job. And when marketing is ready, and then ramp up the sales, and when sales is ready, then ramp up the customer success. It's a little bit of science, but it's a little bit of also, art there, that you cannot just, wait until everything is done, because it's too late. Because the recruiting, the building the team, building the material, everything takes time. So you have to, at one point, pull the trigger and go with it. And that's partially the difficulty of any startup, the timing that you decide. Again, in our case, it was like just making sure every stage is solid enough to pull the trigger on the next one and start the next phase.
Thank you. Ashish?
So I think the fellow speakers here said the right thing, which is the product market fit and ability to have a scalable product. That's fundamentally the first step in order to think about scaling up. For us, we had to also validate that we had a sales engine also operational, where we were able to make sure that we had the right ICP, the ideal customer profile identified, where our sales team could go and identify and have a conversation with them. So the combination of having the right product and the right sales is what enabled us to think beyond the original early stage and start to look into the scale up model. The subscription revenue model gave us obviously an ability to reinvest into the business. And once we have an ideal size of customers that we were able to gather feedback and reinvest into the product, we were able to then really accelerate that and go forward and invest more and more into the scale-up model.
Thank you. Hector?
The next question I will actually move on to, and that is, we would like each of you to respond to this question. What outside advice or help did you get at some point, and what was the reason for that? Was it because you were in need of pivoting your business model? What was the scenario if you did use that type of advice? Or what kind of groups did you reach out to, for like peer CEO kind of groups? So I'd like to ask Arman to lead this particular question.
Sure. So, I took any help and advice that I could. So there is no shortage of, need there from a CEO perspective. At the end of the day, you are in the CEO position in the company, and it's a lonely kind of situation, right? So everybody in the company is really doing their best in their own sector, domain of expertise, and they are, very much like scientists and engineers in what they do. They know the science of marketing if they are marketing people, or they know the science of engineering if they are product people. As the CEO, you feel like, okay, I'm here, and I need to really make sure that everybody is so busy winning the battles, and I'm the guy responsible to winning the war. And if we lose the war, even if you have won all of the battles, that's on me, and I need to take that responsibility very seriously and be very kind of keep my eyes open all the time and make sure that at the end of the day, just because tactically we are doing the right thing, it doesn't guarantee that we are going to win as a group. And so as a CEO, you really pay attention to those kind of things. You have to network with other CEOs. You have to really interact with other people groups. If there is a good person to mentor you, that's great. So yeah, I have been open to almost any, and I have been creative in finding any talent, any help that I could. And to be honest with you, sometimes people reached out to me to discuss and use me as a sounding board. And I should say, I learned as much as they learned out of those discussions. It's just the interaction that I had with a variety of people, and always be open to interact and help and get help. I think that helps. To be honest with you, I don't have any single formula, but I'm open to all the ideas from LinkedIn, which I use every single day to interact with people, to writing some blog posts on Medium and getting some feedback and connections from there, to attending some events as much as I can, either virtual or just in person if it's possible. And I will entertain all of these. I would not discriminate against any help which I can provide, which I can receive.
Great, thank you so much. Ashish?
Previous companies where I had the pleasure of working, the CEOs of those companies were instrumental in kind of giving advice. As Arman said, there's a lot of help around our area, and there are a lot of successful businesses. I would encourage kind of associating and finding CEOs and successful entrepreneurs who have done something similar, because then you end up learning a lot. Like if you are an enterprise software company, then connecting to those CEOs, because they have faced different challenges than like if you have a B2C model versus industries that you serve. So I was able to identify several folks who had done something similar and build a network with them, go to various events that those people were speaking, strike a conversation with them, trying to learn and get some help. So that was one obviously big factor and big group of people who have done it. And then from specific advice side, when we started building up our team, we reached out and took like a specific coach for our leadership team in terms of like onboard some coach for each position as well as for collectively as a team, and took some team building activities with groups like the table group that helped us a lot in terms of building our team on the same page and really scaling up workshops. So there were some of the other outside helps that our team seek in terms of really putting some structure around not just helping me as a CEO, but really trying to help our whole team as well.
Great, thank you. And Manoj, what about you?
Yeah, it's a lonely world up there. When as a CEO you're making decisions, the buck stops at you. As Arman and Ashish mentioned, some of the similar resources in networking events. I'm part of Mindshare CEO group, which is a local in the DC metro area group. I rely on them. LinkedIn is a great resource. But beyond that, I actually reached out to some of the folks who have successfully exited their companies in the B2B space, in the sales intelligence space, and we brought 2 of them as advisors. The other thing we did was we built a board very early on with someone who had sold a company specifically in our space, as well as someone who has built multiple companies. So that helped us a lot. And once we got to a place where we were generating, $1 million in ARR, we actually brought the professional help in different areas. Like locally, we brought in Maestro Group to provide the training for our sales team and help us recruit and scale that team. We brought in, higher up team to the HR consulting company to help us bring that rigor and discipline in recruiting the right go-to-market team, right? We engaged with the marketing agencies to help us get our name and the brand out there. So lots of resources that we could pay after we started generating revenue, we relied on. But early on, it was mostly, what can we do or what can I do as a CEO to learn from the other CEOs and the CEO network, the social network, right, the professional social networks that we have, as well as some advisors and board members.
Great, thank you so much. And Laurie, you have the next question, but I also want to point out to the audience, we have received a few questions and we are going to allow those questions to be answered during Q&A. So just hang on and we'll get to them. So Laurie, you have this question.
Right, so for those who want to scale their company, what advice would you provide? And Ashish, let's start with you.
Sorry, I was on mute. The advice, I think you're hearing some of it during this conversation. I think networking with the right like-minded organizations who have built businesses. I think having a sounding board, somebody who can advise you, that's obviously very important. The other part is like really capitalizing the business. That's really very important in terms of like the talent crunch that is out there in a marketplace today, where every one of us is looking for the right talent, and having a good capitalized business is also pretty important in order to enable you to scale and continue to the whole making the product scalable, because for product organizations, it's really the product that leads the way, and you really need to have very scalable product and repeatable, scalable processes. Those are some of the key thoughts that come to my mind in terms of giving advice.
Thank you. Manoj?
Yeah, to me, everything starts with a very strong team. As you're building the company, I think CEOs have three key jobs. Number one, come up with the vision and share that vision as often as loud with your team and all the constituents, with your clients, with the network, with the market. First is the vision. Second is build a strong team around you. And third is make sure you don't run out of money. Right? A good mentor of mine when I was starting my first company, he was like, building a company is like a video game, right? Playing a video game. You run out of coins, you die, you start all over. So you make sure that you never run out of capital. But to me, the things are, you have to build a strong team, and strong team is going to build a good product. It doesn't mean that you will find a product market fit. They'll build a good product. So the key is very quickly iterate and get to the market. Many founders, I made the mistake in my second company. They wait and polish every single feature before they get to market. I think that's a mistake. With SalesIntel, we went to market with alpha product and we sold it such. We said this is the alpha product, right? And we will be iterating very quickly on that. So the key is to get that product market fit as early and as quickly as you can get. Once you've gotten the product market fit, then the key is to build the right infrastructure for go-to-market teams. Right? Otherwise, you have the product market fit, but without the infrastructure, if you start to scale, you're going to fail. Right? So those are 4 things that I would say. Build a team, prove that the product market fit exists, and then very important step, build that go-to-market infrastructure before scaling the company.
Thank you. Arman?
Sure. So, obviously team is very important, right? So that's what everything is happening in the company because people in the company are making it. So, but how do you really select the right team? Because sometimes, you go there and just wanted to find some good friends. So you have very much, the same interests. So you can go and just, play golf together, or you both like, having beer together or something. That's not the way you should pick, people as a kind of team members of your company, because just because they are like you and they have shared interest, it doesn't make a good company. In my view, if the team has a diversity and they bring different kind of ideas, they bring different talents, they have different aspects in mind, that is what makes the team capable enough to scale it. And I used to ask this simple question that, in Microsoft days, that everybody was using Microsoft Office back then. Amongst Excel, PowerPoint, and Microsoft Word, what's your favorite? And if everyone in the team says, I love Microsoft Word and I use that more often than others, you don't have the diversity. Because to me, if you really are mostly using Excel, you are good in planning, execution. If you are using more Word, you are the person who wants to put some details around everything and define it. And if you are more a PowerPoint guy, probably you are mostly, the person who put together the vision and illustrates it and explain it and these kind of things. And we wanted to see the variety of different people in any department. So if marketing wanted to scale, they needed to have all 3 types of people. If sales wanted to scale, they needed all 3 types of people. If product wanted to scale, they needed all 3 types of people. So, and the same with customer success. So that essentially makes the organization scalable because you have the right people and complementary to each other. And there is enough diversity there to think about the problem from different angles and tackle that and then find the solution, but they know the art of communication. So they can really have very constructive communication as well. But that is what I would advise, everyone, any founder, any CEO to do, just to make sure any division of the company has that kind of diversity and that kind of coverage for different aspects.
Thank you so much. And now we're going to address the questions from the audience. And the first question that we have is, at what stage do you think is most valuable as far as bringing investors? What type of investors worked for you? And I'll open this up to anyone who wants to answer.
I can take a stab at it.
Sure.
Yeah, I think depending upon the type of company you are building, you define when you bring the investors. Right? The most sage advice is once you have the product market fit and then you're ready to scale, that's when you bring the investors, because 99% of the investors, they come in and add value, whether it's in terms of financing or in the boardroom. The downside of bringing investors early on, if they're not in that 1% and fully aligned, is you have stressful board meetings, and the business building is difficult as it is. It just takes the fun out of it. So that's just my 2 cents as to when you bring the business. In that 1% of the cases, if you're lucky, you have a very innovative idea, but to even build your MVP, you need the funding and the money. Then find that investor who knows there is 9 out of 10 chances that he or she is going to lose the money.
Anyone else?
Yeah, so there are different aspects to it. So one aspect of the investor is, if there is a good match between what they have done in the past and what you are doing. And then if that investor has any strategic also interest, meaning that, for example, what you are doing is not just about, I put this money and then I get the return. Those define really some of other characteristics, define the stage that you wanted to get involved. For example, if your company is at the later stage, maybe a professional investor is the best fit to that kind of scenario. When you are at the earlier stage, you need someone who also has a passion, has a special interest in what you really do, so it can be more patient with you. I mean, I was watching the Pixar documentary the other day, and the way Steve Jobs went there and invested in Pixar and became the first investor. And in many cases, I was thinking, if it was not a Steve Jobs who had a passion for that, and it was a regular investor, probably the person would not have invested and would have not been patient enough to see the Pixar's success. And they went through really a tough time. And even Steve Jobs at one point was kind of getting close to say, let's just stop the show. Let's go and just sell this entity to somebody and just get out of it. But still, he was patient enough to stay there because of the passion that he had. And then it became such a huge success, as we all know. So the right investor at the right stage is really the key to the success of the company. Of course, not all the time we as founders have the option to choose who we want to work with, but we should do our best. And if you're lucky, we will find the right match, and then it will be very helpful.
Thank you, Arman. Our next audience question is, how many times did you pivot product or go-to-market strategy, and why did you do that, and what was the outcome? Anyone?
I can take a step here as well.
Sure.
I think I mentioned product once. We were a consumer-focused company at Circleback, and we pivoted to service the businesses, right? And that pivot worked out. And why did we make that pivot? Because we just weren't making enough money to sustain the business from consumers, right? Consumer apps. Nobody wants to pay even $1 for that app. In terms of business model, we didn't change the business model. It was always, subscription-based business based on licenses or the usage of those 2 parameters. But the go-to-market strategy, we had to pivot, as I mentioned earlier. I wanted to build a company where I don't have to hire a salesperson. I want to build a company where We have a digital marketing self-service portal. People sign up, and we have a customer support team. But what we realized was when the customers are spending tens of thousands of dollars on a solution, they need consultative sale. And early on, we very quickly realized that and made that pivot, and again, worked out well. And now we're trying to figure out, is there a hybrid model, right? Our target market is huge. Any company that has a sales and a marketing team in the B2B space, they could use our product. Because our target market is so huge, now we are on the drawing board as we speak as an executive team to say, all right, our traditional model is scaling. We have about 100% go-to-market team, and the plan is to grow that to 200 here in the next 3 to 4 quarters. But is there a model where for the lower end of the market, we have a self-service where they come in, swipe the credit card, and transact for 5,000 or whatever the number is, the threshold is. Hopefully that answers the question.
It certainly did. Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I would like to add a few points as well. First of all, based on my personal experience, 4 companies that started so far, every single time I had to pivot. There was no single time that I was just starting and I knew exactly what to do. I was clueless when I started. So I had to really go, and I know what kind of product I like to build, but I don't know necessarily what kind of product market wants me to build, right? So these are 2 different things. And if I build a product that I like, I will be the customer, but who else wants to buy it? And then I will not really create any income for my company. So I have to really be responsive to the market. And that's the whole idea, that what I like needs to be adjusted to work best for the market. So that's a good starting point. You start there, but you need to go and just do the pivoting to make it work best for the market. And market rules, you never should fall in love with your product, because what really should you fall in love with is market. So when we started at Qrvey, for example, there are parts of it that has not changed since day one. There are parts of it that totally have changed. So, for example, we started with AWS. That part stayed. So we are native to AWS and the only platform built natively on AWS for SaaS providers. That didn't change. We wanted to build a modern analytic or automation platform that is all in one. So it collects data, it analyzes, it automates. That didn't change. That's reflected in our logo that was created day one when we started. So it's all in one, collect, analyze, automate. We wanted to be embeddable, so everyone can embed our technology within their website, mobile app easily. And that didn't change. But almost any other piece changed. So for example, we wanted to emphasize on collecting data a lot more, like collecting from human, like online survey, collecting data from sensors, collecting data from databases. And the idea was you collect all of that in a kind of pulsing style and real-time style. And then later on, we learned that what market was really asking is just, I wanted to emphasize more on the analytics side. And collecting is fine, but I wanted to, so we had to change the focus, mostly put it on the analytic rather than focusing too much on the collecting. And so that was the aspect that changed. So the description, or we thought that we are going to build something for companies to collect feedback. And we thought feedback data is the most important part of data. Any feedback data from sensors, from machines, from database applications, people. And then market showed that there is less appetite for that. It's a very small market. And we had to go and just generalize a little bit more and just say not just feedback data, any type of data we wanted to analyze on and work on. So as you see, a lot of things, very important ones you have to pivot on. But some parts of it also didn't need to change and stay the same.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Well, great. It looks like that's the questions from the audience. So please contact us if you want some help scaling your business. We'd be happy to speak with you and understand your situation better and how we can help. solutions@beyondma.com. And here are the contact information for all 5 of us. Feel free to reach out to us or the panelists if you have any more questions or thoughts. I want to thank Arman, Ashish, and Manoj for joining us today. It was a delight to have them and understand their ideas and their very valuable contributions and experiences. I want to thank the audience for joining us. Have a great day, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, Laurie. Really appreciate
Thank
it.
you so much.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you for having me.
Thank you.